Tashi Derek, ladies and gentlemen, this is the welcome address in Bhutan, the little kingdom in the Himalayas. And I'm Honorary Consul of Bhutan since a couple of years here in Germany. Today my topic is beyond mindfulness, mindlessness, my reflections and experiences. From October 1st to October 3rd this year, an innovation summit took place in Paro, Bhutan, organized by the Bhutan Innovation Forum. This forum introduces itself, quote, "The Bhutan Innovation Forum is a global initiative dedicated to sustainable development and mindful entrepreneurship. It unites international leaders, innovators, and entrepreneurs to support Bhutan's vision of a mindfulness city. Through dynamic workshops, networking, and interactive sessions, this Bhutan Innovation Forum promotes ethical practices, eco-friendly innovation, and cultural preservation, blending modern technology with Bhutanese traditions to drive holistic growth and environmental stewardship," end quote. This event, ladies and gentlemen, is the next step after His Majesty King Jigme-Khesa Namgyel Wangchuk announced in December last year that 1,000 square kilometers area is to be created in the Gelefu area as a so-called Special Administrative Region, SAR, in which people will live and invest with their own legislation with a focus on mindfulness. The King's speech is on my website. You may have a look. My website on-consulate-bhutan.de. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the Innovation Forum, either as a speaker or as a participant, for important reasons. The presentations and discussions are now online. You may have a look under Innovation Summit, Paro, Bhutan in October. Therefore, I feel inspired to contribute my own thoughts and experiences as a supplement and basis for a discussion, so to speak. My focus today is on mindfulness, letting go, consciousness, information, effect, and impact. First, mindfulness. Those who practiced mindfulness in earlier years, like myself, and I talked about it, and I did, were ridiculed and discriminated against as esoteric by all those who neither understood nor experienced esotericism, the path within yourself, as opposed to exotericism, the path in the outside world. During my professional years until 1996, I never revealed that I meditated. But after that, I started talking and writing about the path within ourselves. You may have a look to my websites, ligy.de or on-consulate-bhutan, or have a look to my YouTube channel. There are plenty of YouTubes for you. Today, mindfulness is a buzzword on everyone's lips, and there are numerous followers. They are all looking for a way out of their own personal dilemma. But often mindfulness is defined, felt, and practiced in a too limited way from my perspective. I am concerned with the realm of experience beyond mindfulness, Isn't it essentially about not getting stuck in thinking, doing, achieving with our mind, but opening up to our spiritual dimension, to our spirit beyond mind? Unfortunately, in German we only have one term that's called Geist. In English, you're lucky, is distinguished between mind and spirit. Mind and spirit. I would therefore prefer the term mindlessness to explain what I mean. Chongsa Yamchang Khyentse Rinpoche also mentioned this term at the Innovation Summit during this year's dialogue with Meyer-Galow, very well-known master, when he was asked what he meant by mindfulness. He's a Buddhist teacher, a film director, and an author. Mindfulness, from my point of view, is only the gateway to an expanded consciousness. Many decide to practice mindfulness, but get stuck at the cognitive level, very often without knowing it. Recently, a meditation teacher said to me, "It saddens me very much when I see so many faces in the session," this is a meeting where you meditate, "who have been practicing mindfulness for decades, but nothing has happened," end quote. They have remained stuck at the level of thinking, feeling, doing, wanting, achieving. The dawning of an expansion of consciousness is always a grace that cannot be forced. In mindfulness practice, it happens quickly for some, but never for many. You cannot do it. You must wait, practice and wait for that grace, and live gracefully with uncertainty. An episode that Walter Schwering, my teacher of Jungian depth psychology, liked to tell, makes very clear what the meditation teacher meant, and what also corresponds to my experiences. Quote, "I was at a session in Tuscany with a Tibetan Rinpoche, a master. We were 120 students practicing mindfulness. We did mindfulness. We were concentrating on mindfulness. We do mindfulness. The master came to us and saw us very concentrated to our mindfulness practice and shouted, 'Don't meditate, just relax.' Everyone laughed, let go completely, and were in the inner center. Before that, they were only in their heads. They were suddenly in a space beyond mindfulness, ladies and gentlemen. Please don't get me wrong. I don't want to disparage mindfulness and the necessity of practicing mindfulness, especially in today's fast-paced, crisis-ridden times. We cannot live and survive without mindfulness. Practicing mindfulness, preferably daily, has many advantages and leads to a more conscious life. Compassion and empathy can be the result. Better ways of dealing with yourself and others grow. It is similar to autogenic training. It works, but only briefly. The effect quickly disappears with the next disruption. The opening of consciousness is not sustainable. The source of change lies deeper within us. Second, letting go. Mindfulness is only the gateway to all meditation, perhaps 10%. However, the more difficult part must then follow in the mindfulness exercise, and that is the letting go. The mindfulness exercise often has a focus to make it easier. The breath, a mantra, an image, a prayer, and so on, or even nothing. All of this must go. All of this must be let go. Letting go leads to serenity, and serenity leads to compassion, ladies and gentlemen. This is the sequence. David Hawkins expressed this exactly and wonderfully in the introduction to his book with the title Letting Go, The Way of Resistance-Free Capitulation. Ladies and gentlemen, the following is a translation of the German book, the translated German book, and I translated German back into English, though this is not the exact quote of David Hawkins. I translated it. But nevertheless, it's almost the same. Quote, during the many years of clinical psychiatric practice, the primary goal was to find the most effective ways to alleviate human suffering in all its many forms. To this end, numerous medical specialties were explored, such as psychology, psychiatry, psychoanalysis, behavioral therapy, biofeedback, acupuncture, nutrition, brain chemistry, neurochemistry. Beyond these clinical modalities, philosophical terms, metaphysics, or a variety of holistic health techniques, self-help courses, spiritual path, meditation techniques, and other awareness expanding avenues were explored. In all this exploration, it was discovered that the mechanism of surrender has enormous practical value. Its important significance demanded the writing of this book to share with you others what has been clinically observed and personally experienced. The previous published 10 books of David Hawkins, were focused on advanced states of awareness and enlightenment. And over years during our lectures and satsangs, thousands of spiritual scholars asked questions that reveal the daily obstacles to enlightenment. It is pragmatic and helpful to share a technique that supports their success in overcoming such obstacles. How to deal with the vicissitudes of daily life, with its losses, disappointments, stressful situations, and crises. How to become free of negative emotions and their impact on health, relationships, and work. How do you overcome all these unwanted emotions? The present work describes a simple and effective means by which one learns to let go of negative emotions and become free. The letting go technique is a pragmatic system of eliminating obstacles and attachments. It can also be described as a mechanism of surrender. There is specific scientific proof of the effectiveness of this technique, which will be explained in a later chapter. Research has shown this technique to be far more effective than many of the other approaches available today for alleviating the physiological response to stress, for instance. Having researched most of the different stress reduction and consciousness methods, this approach stands out due to its sheer simplicity, efficiency, clinical effectiveness, lack of any questionable concepts, and the rapidity of its observable results. Its simplicity is deceptive and almost believes the true benefit of this technique. In simple terms, ladies and gentlemen, it frees us from emotional attachments. It confirms the observation of every sage that attachments are the main source of suffering. The mind, with its thoughts, is driven by emotions. Each emotion is a concentrated derivative of many thousands of thoughts. Since most people throughout their entire lives repress, suppress, and try to flee from their emotions. From suppressed energy accumulates and seeks to express itself through psychosomatic suffering, physical disorders, emotional illnesses, and misconduct in interpersonal relations. The accumulated feeling blocks spiritual growth and awareness as well as success in many of areas of life. End quote. Ladies and gentlemen, it's always also about the integration of the shadow, called by Carl Gustav Jung, the deaf psychologist, that is becoming aware of everything that has been suppressed and repressed. We are still aware of what we have suppressed, but no longer of what has been repressed. It's gone. I know many spiritual people who practice mindfulness, but in crisis situations, the shadow breaks through and wants to become manifest in the world through classic projections. Then everyone wonders how this do-gooder can do that. Third, I come to consciousness. What exactly is consciousness? This is a fair question, as there's a lot of talk and writing about consciousness today. Who knows what consciousness really is? Difficult to describe with words. If you yourself have experienced consciousness, then you may know. If you ask, you usually don't get a satisfactory answer. I agree with Eckhart Tolle, the famous German living in the United States as an author for spiritual wisdom, who distinguishes between an objective consciousness and a non-objective consciousness. In our lives, we are almost always in objective consciousness. Otherwise, we would not be viable at all. The table, the glass, the water, the Meyer-Galow, the paper, the writings, the emotions, the climate, everything. Objective consciousness. At this level, we are aware of matter and energy. We are aware of our ego, our feelings, everything we have learned, everything we perceive with our senses, etc. We experience this objective consciousness all the time, which is why many people only understand this objective consciousness when it comes to consciousness. When asked how we can experience non-objective consciousness, Tolle said, in a sense, quote, when you meditate in the mindfulness exercise, the thoughts and feelings arise that need to be letting go. When thoughts and feelings then disappear through letting go, the next thoughts and feelings do not immediately arise. In between, there is always a little gap without any thoughts and any feelings, just nothing. This gap, this nothing, is the non-objective consciousness. Through the practice of mindfulness and letting go, the aim is to enlarge this gap. That is, to expand the realm for experience of the non-objective consciousness, end quote. This is expansion of consciousness. Consciousness is the basis of everything. Everything arises from consciousness, from objective and non-objective consciousness. I would like to refer here to the physicist Federico Fellini, ladies and gentlemen, who, from his own experience, has dealt a great deal with consciousness as a scientist. The trained person can switch from objective consciousness to non-objective consciousness anytime. That's what I call click-clack method. Click, clack. Objective, non-objective. Objective, non-objective. Over and over again. It's important to practice this. The mechanism is how to become a whole person. Everybody wants to become a whole person. When somebody's ill, it says he's not a whole person. Whole person is the unit of body, soul, and spirit. Not body, soul, and mind. The mind belongs to the body. Body and mind is one unit. And then your soul is your leader into the spiritual dimension. If you have lost the connection to your soul by living a life concentrated on the ego only, or on your thinking only, or on your mind only, then you have lost the leader to your spiritual dimension. So this is the tragedy. No, not many people know. This is the process which is called individuation, called by Carl Gustav Jung. This process to become a whole person is a process of individuation, to become a whole individual. Out of this process grows empathy, compassion, love, resilience. Very important today, be resilient. Creativity, inspiration, intuition, innovation, health, and so on. And now I come to the term being. Alfred Graf Dürkheim, my first teacher, speaks of the double origin of man. The earthly bound origin is the consciousness of the ego. The divine origin is the essence, which is defined as follows. The essence is the way in which the trans-space and trans-time being wants to manifest itself in us and through us in the world. The essence is the way in which the trans-space and trans-time being wants to manifest itself in us and through us in the world. It's important, not only in us, but wants to manifest through our action, out of this enlightenment, in the world. In the Jungian diction, this essence is the self. The trans-space and trans-time being is the higher self, or, as just mentioned, the non-objective consciousness. So after the important development of the ego, the aim in life is to free ourselves from the suppression of the ego and to let it work in one's own life and in the world. All attachments come from the ego and lead to suffering. I mentioned that already. It is a life task, an obligation to anchor the ego in ourselves. I'm not a fan of overcoming the ego. We need our ego. It's extremely important to master our lives, but it must be anchored in the self. Otherwise, the ego spreads to selfishness and egomania. These are undesirable developments, but there are also many people with a weak ego, ladies and gentlemen. This is also a negative development. The ego must be strengthened through exercises. If the ego is built up, then you can let it go. If the ego is weak, don't let it go, you get in a big problem. We suffer in this duality. There's often an unconscious yearning to reunite the ego with the self. A yearning to achieve the wholeness, as I said, in which we are up to the age of 3, when we were whole. As a baby, we were whole. Then this unity breaks up to develop the ego. And we forget and lose ourselves. This can only be achieved if we overcome transparent to immanent transcendence. We have to become transparent to the immanent, which is overall, transcendence. Transcendence, you may say God or Allah. It's always there, but we don't see it, we don't feel it, because we are trained to feel it, to experience it. we rarely succeed in doing this with the mindfulness exercise only. With the practice of mindfulness and letting go, there is a greater chance of experiencing immanent transcendence. That is why Durkheim, the meaning of life is the following, and it's great, ladies and gentlemen. This wording is just great. What is the meaning of life? It's transparency for immanent transcendence. Transparency for immanent transcendence. The trans-space-time being is the non-objective consciousness. And now I come to information. For my current teacher, Thomas Campell, a physicist and consciousness researcher, consciousness is also the basis of everything, from which everything arises. However, he goes one step further and sees the information that comes from the non-objective consciousness field, what he calls the larger consciousness system, as the basis of everything, as he describes in detail in his book. The book title is The Big Toe. Toe stands for theory over everything, and in all its features. The larger consciousness system stores all information from the past, from the present, and the future. In the practice of mindfulness and letting go, we can receive information from the larger consciousness system. This information manifests itself as matter and energy, as word and image, so that we can recognize it. Information rarely flows when we are only on the level of thinking, feeling, doing, achieving, and having our own objective ego consciousness. Despite all efforts of mindfulness, it rarely flows. It requires a leap to the level of being. He calls this level the being state. This level can be reached through exercises of mindfulness, meditation, and letting go. He facilitates this leap in consciousness by playing frequencies that differ by 4 hertz between the 2 ears. Physicists have found that the corpus callosum, the membrane between the 2 halves of the brain, vibrates at 4 hertz, 4 beats per second, in enlightened monks, for instance. At 2 hertz when we are sleeping, and 8 hertz now when I talk to you during the day. If you now apply the 4 hertz frequency at the 2 ears, the corpus callosum actually vibrates with 4 hertz. And you enter easier the being state. In this state, information can be accessed from the larger consciousness system, but rarely from the cognitive level. Incidentally, the placebo effect can also be explained in this way, ladies and gentlemen. Ultimately, the practice of mindfulness and letting go is about consciousness information flow. I come to how to work with it and about the effect. The point is that by practicing mindfulness and letting go, we open up the possibility of the non-objective consciousness, the trans-space and trans-time being, or the higher self, to take effect in us, and as a result, to make a contribution to evolution from an expanded consciousness in the outside world. My meditation teachers always pointed out to me that meditation can be practiced without intention. However, with Thomas Campell, I learned that you can definitely combine the intention to work and make an impact with meditation. He says, if you are already in the being state, dear friends, through the practice of mindfulness and letting go, then you have to express an intention of what you want to achieve. You can ask the larger consciousness system questions, and you receive answers and information. Regarding the future, you will receive an information with the highest probability, of course. You can not only make a difference in yourself, but also in others by connecting your consciousness with the consciousness of others through the positive influence of the information stream. Examples are diagnosis and healing. in the case of illness. Ladies and gentlemen, now I come to one exception: mindfulness without meditation. It happens. Finally, I should be mentioned that you can also get to the being level without mindfulness meditation and do a lot of good. My friend Hans-Peter Dürr, quantum physicist and Heisenberg student, who unfortunately died much too early, never meditated. To achieve the state of absolute presence, he preferred what he called the loving dialogue. He said, quote, "You know, Erhard, when I meditate, I simply lack spontaneity. When I engage in loving dialogue, that is, a dialogue with empathy and compassion, without judgment and prejudice with another, the cooperative background field can unfold, freely manifesting itself in meta-emotional energy. The prerequisite is that one has learned to experience the background field. The cooperative background field is empty. It's empty, ladies and gentlemen. But it has a property, and that is the potentiality, the potential to manifest itself constantly in fractions of seconds as matter energy. Everything comes off this field, what we call reality. The cooperative background field is the actual truth reality, from which all reality of the objective consciousness arises. Reality is the frozen background field. The actual truth reality of Hans-Peter Dürr corresponds to the non-objective consciousness of Eckhart Tolle, the essence of Carl Friedrich Durkheim, and the higher self of Carl Gustav Jung. For Hans-Peter Dürr, the lasting meaning of life is, and after several times, he said, make the living more lively. Make the living more lively. Isn't that also the meaning of our life? With every exercise and mindfulness, letting go of our individual and collective consciousness, of our being, and of opening up the flow of information as the basis of all being, and to have an effect on our so problematic world and to achieve something positive day after day. We don't have to search, ladies and gentlemen. We encounter this situation. It's therefore about perceiving and acting out of empathy and compassion. Incidentally, these openings are also prerequisites for any kind of creativity, intuition, inspiration, and innovation. That's why I think it's important and great that this mindfulness plays such an important role at the Innovation Summit in Bhutan. So it is important and perhaps even essential. With our rational mind, you first have to define and construe the task or the problem. Then it's time to let go and turn inward, because intuition comes from Latin intuere, to turn inside, inward. The thalamus and the limbic system become active, not the neocortex. Ideas fly to you. The next step is important. Inspiration. From Latin inspirare, to breathe in. we have to breathe in new creative ideas and then let become our own. If you don't do that, they are gone. We have an intuition, but if you don't inspire, they are gone. It's so important to inspire, make it your own. And then our intellect that then links the idea with our knowledge, and all our knowledge and all our things. And ladies and gentlemen, this then may lead to an invention. Innovation therefore requires, and this is very important, requires this chain of action beforehand. Intentionally, or sometimes unintentionally. Sometimes, since mindfulness is so deeply rooted in Buddhist Bhutan, Bhutan should actually have the ideal conditions to solve the tasks and problems of today's modern world through innovations, and may have others outside to solve the problems. However, intuition needs the knowledge of the intellect as an anchor to create something creatively new. A lot of positive things have happened in Bhutan in recent years in terms of imparting knowledge in a good education. Now, it is about offering the well-educated citizens a way to apply the knowledge and gain experience, to have a big base of intellect, to let intuitions and inspirations grow into inventions and innovations. Ladies and gentlemen, I come to the end. May the Innovation Summit trigger an innovation boost in Bhutan. So much for my reflections on the Innovation Summit in Paro, Bhutan in October 2024. Namaste.